Of things, we inherited the power sector with these conditions. So we're looking at reduction in the taxes, we're looking at bringing in more efficiency into the transmission systems by investing into the key constraints that our transmission sector faces today. And there are many of them. And the removal of these constraints could actually translate into a reduction in the price for the consumer. That could also translate into more efficient usage of the indigenous resource, may it be fossil fuel or clean energy or hydel or solar or wind. We are already curtailing wind power as we speak. The cheaper plants on the local coal are not being dispatched because of lack of transmission infrastructure. And even the hydel part, if you don't go all out and invest into certain transmission lines, that could help evacuate the power coming in from the upcoming hydel projects. Pakistan would be seriously facing issues within the next 1 or 2 years. So the efficiency within the transmission system is being looked at as one of the key reforms in the power sector. We are trying to get the furnace oil part of the generation out of the system. We've already started negotiating with about 5 IPPs which are producing power on furnace oil. We've already started speaking to the others who would be shifted on to a take and pay kind of a regime instead of us paying heavy capacity payments for. The power sector reforms also include very aggressive work that has been initiated on the DISCO privatization part of it. 3 companies have already been offered to the Privatization Commission to go ahead with the transaction. The financial advisor should be in place next month, so by the middle of next year, you should have 3 distribution companies privatized. And by the end of next year, you should have another 2 companies that would have been given out on the concession agreement model, which is Sakkar and Hyderabad. So out of the 10 distribution companies, at least half or a little more than half should have been privatized by the end of next year. Therefore, plugging the holes that exist within the distribution sector, which is a constant drain of close to 600 billion rupees on the national exchequer, and it is really stifling the growth and the amount of money that we could invest into the public sector development program. We are also making very good progress on the competitive energy markets. The entity that's supposed to be created called the Independent System Market Operator, that's supposed to extract 2 very important parts of NTDC and CPPA out and form one company, which is the ISMO, which would be the basis of competitive markets to operate on. That is, the summary has been sent to the Prime Minister and for the Cabinet to consider. So within the next 1 month, we should hope to have this ISMO registered and operational with NTDC and CPPA's existing workforce contributing into the company. So ISMO, the creation of ISMO would then help us move towards realizing the dream of wheeling energy on an efficient basis to the bulk consumers in the first phase and to others in the next. This was actually committed by the Power Division to happen in the year 2009, but still has not been a reality for us. So we are hoping that inshallah within the next 1 year or so, we should have the bulk consumers actually having an environment in place where they could buy renewable and efficient power from producers, and that power could be, those electrons could be wheeled all the way to the premise of these businesses. And the competitive market, we are hoping that in the next 3 to 4 years would evolve and mature into something that could translate into the rail, bilateral energy market that could bring down the price of energy and could remove us or extract us from this kind of an environment where CPPA could be the only buyer. So that's the only way to push Pakistan out of the single buyer model. And then we're also investing and hoping to invest a lot. We've already started talking to the Chinese investors to convert our imported coal plants into local coal-based plants. And we started running the studies and the feasibilities and the economic and the technical and the financial feasibilities for this conversion. And we hope that our energy mix could be the energy price of power itself could really come down substantially because of this. This might have an impact of close to 2 rupees per unit as far as the energy price of the entire pool is concerned. We are also aggressively investing into something called a power information system. We have a company called PITC, but the role of PITC has been just restricted to offering billing services to the distribution companies, and that's about it. PITC needs to evolve or be converted into the repository of real-time and very properly verified and the credibility data, because data in the power sector is the most important thing and is the key. Unfortunately, even us policymakers at times have serious concerns on the credibility of the data that we have actually provided from time to time. So we are trying to set in place a system within the next year where PITC could be the repository for the entire power sector's data that could then use analytical tools to be able to come up with good, proper suggestions and policy interventions for the policymakers to make. The most important part of our reforms is to set in place an efficient technical arm of the power division. The power division needs to make serious policy interventions from time to time. It's not just once in 6 months or once in 3 months, but almost on a weekly basis we are faced with situations where we need to make a policy decision one way or the other. For these policy decisions to be made, we need technical expertise. These technical expertise are unfortunately not available to us. We rely on World Bank giving us some consultants from time to time, helping us through the technical assistance programs that they are able to fund for us. The Asian Development Bank doing that, the USAID doing that. But there is no in-house facility available in the form of technical expertise which could actually support the power division to make all the key policy decisions. There are secretaries that we have, there are additional secretaries and joint secretaries, and then political people or the technocrats in the form of ministers and SAPMs and ministers of state. But I don't think we are all armed enough with the expertise that are required to handle and to take forward this very complex power sector. I don't think if we continue to do or make, if we continue to have policy interventions based on just hearsay, which has been, by the way, happening in the past. In the past 3 or 4 decades, there has not been a considered, well thought out, researched way of even adding generation capacity to the profile that we have, that exists today. It's all been done in a rush all the time. Pakistan used to face all the load shedding that we used to in the past, and every government was in a hurry to do something within the next 2 to 3 years and try to get Pakistan out of it and get the political so-called constituency of theirs to clap for us, appreciating that we've ended load shedding, but at what cost? What energy mix have we been investing into? What is going to be the future? What happens if the indigenous part of that energy mix is not enough to provide Pakistan the kind of energy security that Pakistan must have? So all these things require proper technical information, use of complex softwares and applications that are used elsewhere in the world. Then we've also been relying on growth projections that might have been just a dream for us. So all the demand projections in the future that Pakistan has made in the past have all been at, say, an assumption of 6% growth rate. So when that 6% is not actually achieved, the demand is not actually materialized, and then we end up in capacities that are unutilized, and the rest of the pool of consumers being burdened with that unutilized capacity. We're also looking at seriously bringing in an environment where the tariff slabs in Pakistan are absolutely uniform. We need to give out a bill that clearly states that every consumer needs to build a certain amount according to a certain rate. And then whoever needs to be subsidized needs to be through a social protection program for people to be in for people not to easily exploit this kind of a tariff slab structure that exists within Pakistan. Then we're also looking at, we're not just looking at, all these things are happening, by the way. In the past 6 months, the kind of progress that we've made in all these past sector reform areas has been extremely encouraging. And the people at the Power Ministry and other professionals were actually helping us. They have a key role to play in this. Then we're also pursuing an aggressive program on the energy conservation side. I think MD Nika would have spoken on this platform earlier this morning. Nika has been tasked to come up with this program that we're about to roll out next month, although it's not a good time to roll out this program because usage of fans would be going down up in the northern parts of the country. But at least in the south it will start picking up. So we are looking at a conservation program where fans could be made more efficient, that could bring down our so-called peak demand by a good few thousand megawatts if this transition actually happens over the next few years. We have a very unhealthy demand curve. So we actually peak out, and most of the peak that happens over and above the 11,000 so-called megawatts of demand that exists in the country is all fans and air conditioners and inefficient building codes that Pakistan has in place. So the energy conservation part of it would really in the long term help Pakistan achieve a much healthier demand profile that could help the policy makers avoid any investments into energy that are not required for a productive manner and in a consistent enough manner. So I'll just give you an example. There are about 3,500 megawatts that are there in place in our entire generation capacity that are used just for about 200 hours or 250 hours in a year out of the 8,760 hours in a year. So this is the luxury and the cost of luxury that one has to pay, and this is something that Pakistan and the power sector of Pakistan can't really afford. So we've also, by the grace of God, reached a point where NTDC, the transmission arm of the power sector, is going to be now split up into 3 parts. We're not happy with the way the projects are rolled out and they're actually developed and then handed over to the asset management part of NTDC and the operations part. So we are actually going to be making another company by the name of NGC, the projects. That will be a very slim and efficient company with very top-class professionals in it. And we are going to adopt an outsourcing kind of a model where the rollout and implementation of projects that are much required for transmission to come into place. In spite of having all the funds available, most of our transmission projects are delayed by over 4 to 6 years. That's very unfortunate. And every day that the projects are actually delayed, it's adding on to the cost of electricity for the consumer. So the 660 transmission line that the Chinese invested into, that's been underutilized for years now, just because the Lahore grid project has not come into place. So the NGC project part of NTDC would ensure that we don't have any such problems occurring in the future. Then the other part of NTDC would be a part of the independent system market operator, who would be responsible for all the planning of the future energy that Pakistan needs to have and needs to buy. Now, who does that? I'll just give you a little flavor of what the situation is right now. So there's something called IGCEP. IGCEP is a way and a software and a way in which these professionals like Dr. Fayaz sit down and other people in NTDC. So they feed in all these assumptions into this software. And on the basis of those assumptions, the software actually comes up with the least cost, the methodology-based requirement for power in the future. So now I'm not talking of the previous power plants that already exist in the system. Now I'm talking of the future, the committed plants that Pakistan has already inked contracts with. You'll be very happy to know, as far as clean energy is concerned, that the next 17,000 megawatts of plants being added on to our profile are all hydel or nuclear. So one nuclear, everything else is hydel. So it's all clean energy. So we don't have anything to worry about in that sense. But it's not on a least cost methodology. So out of the 17,000 megawatts of plants that we are supposed to add on, that we cannot avoid adding on, that we've already committed, this is also excess baggage that we have, only 87 megawatts fulfill the criteria of least cost basis. That is scary. What do we need to do about it? So we started having a very serious look at the future plants that are supposed to come on to our profile and see what could be done and what part of the cost of those plants need to be drawn out of the pool of the amount that needs to be, that the consumers would be ultimately burdened with. So we need to nationalize that part of the debt or investment that's going into every plant. For instance, the Mohmand Dam project, it's about to be completed. We've already spent money. The tariff of this Mohmand Dam has not been trued up and it's not available to the plant.
वफाकी वज़ीर तवानाई ओवैस लग़ारी लाहौर में तक़रीब से खिताब कर रहे थे।